Excuse me for my voice, but I have never seen anything like it.
You believe in miracles? Yes! Unbelievable.
Welcome to the show, Tuesday edition of Wonder Kids Sam. We're talking about the NFL Combine, some winners and losers. It's a pretty good podcast for you guys that are in a Dynasty Fantasy Football League. You want to keep your ears open and your notepads ready because he's going to drop some knowledge on you guys. How do we feel coming out of the Combine right now, Sam? Anybody that really impressed you?
I think the most impressive player in the entire Combine this year, Isaiah Simmons. I think he had the best Combine out of any prospect. I mean, he ran a 4.39, and he could play almost any single defensive position. So I think it really solidifies his draft status and makes him considerably a top 3 pick.
Yeah, I'm really excited for it. So, listeners, here's the plan. Because we already have Sam on here talking to us a little bit about the AFC West and the AFC South and pretty much the entire AFC. We got the NFC coming up in the next couple weeks. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be breaking down the winners and losers for this year's draft. We're going to do 3 winners, we're going to do 3 losers, and then we're going to kind of sum up some of the sleeper guys that we think are going to go somewhere in the draft. But we're not going to tell you exactly where we think we're going to go. You're going to have to tune into those podcasts. All right, Sam, you already mentioned Isaiah Simmons being the far and away winner. Is it because that he came in not as a known quantity? We were really looking at the Chase Youngs and the Joe Burrows, and Isaiah Simmons comes in as a guy who I think people who watched him play college would say he was really impressive, but people around the country might not have seen him. Do you think that's why he's getting so much recognition right now?
I would say it has a little bit to do with that, but I also think it just really has to do – for some reason, as all of us watch the Combine, the thing that really impresses us the most is the 40 time. I don't know what draws us so much to it, but it's always that 40 time. And if you're hitting 4.39 and you could play safety, cornerback, defensive end, linebacker, and all those positions in the NFL, I mean, it's pretty significant. And that's why he's such a big winner and he's getting talked about so much because, I mean, think about it. He's 6'4", 238 pounds, and he's running a 4.39. And also on top of that, he has a 39-inch vertical and 11-foot broad jump. Like, he's a freak athlete, and I feel we haven't seen that in a very long time. In my opinion, I think the closest comparison to him, even though I think Isaiah Simmons will be a much better player, is Tyrann Mathieu on the Kansas City Chiefs, because Tyrann is kind of a hybrid player, and they even talked about it this year about how he lined up at all these positions, and that's who he reminds me the most of. But I think Simmons might be better.
Yeah,
than
Simmons.
Tyrann Mathieu.
I was going to say Simmons is bigger. He plays linebacker, but he does feel like that next generation of linebacker. He feels like the type of guy that can play defense on a tight end at the same time, cover a running back out of the backfield at the same time, cover some of those crossing routes. He feels like the type of dude that you want playing for your team in 2020.
No, and I agree, and I feel like that is the future of the NFL and where it's going is because think about it now. Now that if a team is lucky enough to draft him, where I think he's going to go somewhere, he's going to go really high after this Combine. I'm not going to say where, but I really think that's what benefits teams a lot now because now instead of going out and paying a top-tier guy, you have someone who could do it all and play all these positions, and it gives the defensive coordinator and the head coach something perfect to work around with and make most of it. I mean, think about it. Now you can run all these defensive schemes and have Isaiah Simmons be the focal point of your defense when you draft him, and that's really important, especially nowadays where teams have all this film and they have all these ways to stop you. Now you put Isaiah Simmons in the mix, and now it's a wrench in the plan.
Let's talk about another guy you've mentioned before on some of these podcasts who you were really high on, Justin Herbert out of Oregon. Now, I watched him play a lot of games. I stayed up really late watching Pac-12 games this season. I wasn't very impressed with his play on the field at Oregon. I know he had that Rose Bowl game that was really impressive, but for the most part, for the regular season, I was not one of the people who was super impressed by the way that he was playing the quarterback position, especially for the next level. But you go into this Combine, and he has one of the, if not the best Combine for a quarterback this year. How do we feel right now about Justin Herbert, and is he one of your winners too?
Yes, he is one of my winners, and he was even my winner at the Senior Bowl this year when he won the Senior Bowl MVP. He really proved to a lot of scouts that he has what it takes. I mean, he ran a 4.68, 35-inch vertical jump. I mean, he was killing it at the Combine. His throwing motions looked good. His NFL comparison is Carson Wentz. So, I mean, that's pretty significant to be drafted out and be compared to Wentz. I mean, hopefully it's not the injury issue that they compare him to about Wentz, but I really did like Justin Herbert's combine a lot. I really think he made a name for himself, and maybe it just gives Miami even more options. And maybe we see Tua or someone fall because, I mean, you can't be sold on Tua yet. I think he's going to be really good, but maybe we just see them throw a wrench in everyone's mock draft, and they take Justin Herbert instead at number 5, the Dolphins.
All right, who's another winner for you? So Herbert was one of mine. Who's a winner for you right now?
So someone I really also liked, and I thought was a big winner, was Chase Claypool, the wide receiver out of Notre Dame. 6'4", 238 pounds. He ran a 4.42 40-yard dash, and he had 19 reps in the bench press and a 40-inch vertical jump. Obviously, the wide receiver class this year is very loaded, and it makes sense that why he was not so high on a lot of scouts' draft boards. But, I mean, he came out, and he really proved a lot of people wrong. He really impressed, and not a lot of Notre Dame players this year are projected to go in the first round, but I think he made a case as if he could go as a late first rounder, early second rounder compared to where they had him at in the third and fourth round. And also, too, Cole Kmet had a great combine, ran a 4.7 as a tight end and a 37-inch vertical. It was a big win for the Notre Dame players.
Yeah, Notre Dame this season kind of middle of the road, but having some players go high, of course, is going to be good for your draft classes. Last one, give me one more winner out of this draft class.
I know I don't want to bring up another wide receiver, but someone I really have to credit is Justin Jefferson out of LSU, Joe Burrow's favorite target. He had a great combine. He ran a 4.43 as well, as similar to Chase Claypool, and he just stood out when he was making all these catches, and he just had a great combine. Do you know when you just watch a player and you're like, wow, look at him? He made a case also to be a top selected wide receiver, and someone who kind of didn't have a great combine in a sense was Jerry Jeudy, and I know he's projected to go pretty high, and he's a winner on a lot of people's boards, but to me, I feel like he could have made the case to prove why he's better than CeeDee Lamb, and he didn't do that.
Yeah, it feels like a lot of these wide receivers are neck and neck still coming into this draft. The wide receivers you mentioned have kind of separated themselves. CeeDee Lamb was a guy to me that had an incredible combine, who I thought that coming into it, I thought he was probably like second or third best receiver. And now I think any team that drafts him any lower, if he's not the first wide receiver off the board in this coming draft, I will be shocked.
Me too, and I think that he really made the case as to why he's the best wide receiver in the draft this year. And I mean, that's saying something because this draft is really loaded with wide receivers.
All right, let's talk about some losers. Sam, I'll let you go first.
Okay, this is not really a loser, but this is more of a disappointment. It was Henry Ruggs not breaking the 40-yard dash record. I really thought he was going to break it, and I was very disappointed that he didn't do that. I mean, he had a 4.28, and then he ran a 4.31, which is fast. So, I mean, to be disappointed with those times is pretty significant, but they hyped it up that he was going to beat they hyped it up that he was going to beat John Ross III's record of a 4.22, and he just didn't do it, and I was kind of disappointed about it, but you know, he still had a great combine, but it's really hard to lose at the combine unless you're AJ Epinenza, who is considered to be a top 20 selection. I mean, he had an awful combine, and it sucks because you really think that he's good, and his technique is what really makes him such a standout defensive end, but he just didn't show it. He ran a 5.04 in the 40, only 17 bench presses. It was pretty disappointing to see AJ Epinenza.
I got a loser for you. Jake Fromm out of Georgia. I thought that he was going to have an incredible combine. I thought his hand size was good. I knew that he wasn't a big-armed quarterback like Matthew Stafford or even Patrick Mahomes. I thought he was going to have a decent draft, but look, he came in, had a couple of incompletions I didn't love, had a couple of just drills that I watched on TV on the replays, and I thought it was a little slow, the ball coming out of his hand. I don't know if it was just combine jitters. Hopefully his pro day is a little bit better, but Jake Fromm to me was one of the guys that I would chalk up to a loser.
I think he might not even get drafted after that combine, to be quite honest.
Wow.
He looked awful. I think he looked awful. I think he should have stayed another year at Georgia, to be honest with you, and I don't think he's ready for the NFL. I was not impressed whatsoever by Jake Fromm. I mean, he was floating balls and he was missing receivers. He did not put on a good show for any of the scouts there, and obviously Justin Herbert, Jordan Love, Jacob Eason, Joe Burrow didn't throw in the drills, but I mean, it makes sense, but he's going to go number one overall. Let's be honest here. I mean, he had a chance to make his mark and be considered among one of the top selections, and he absolutely fell flat on his face. And I know that they had him going in the second round, possibly to the Panthers, but I think he falls way down in the draft, and he may not even get drafted. I was not impressed whatsoever.
He reminds me a lot of Jake Locker. Does that make sense? Just the way that his delivery is, just the way that he kind of carries himself. He reminds me of Jake Locker in a lot of ways.
No, I definitely agree with you.
And that's not an NFL. That's not an NFL comp that you want coming out of the combine, I don't think.
No, definitely not. And even now, with the way the quarterbacks are going, how you want that sort of dual threat quarterback, and how they're going to make plays with their legs and then they're going to extend it. I don't see that coming from Fromm.
Yeah, again, big loser. Another loser I had was Jerry Pickney out of Vanderbilt, the tight end, who I thought was going to have another. He had a really good year 2 years ago in 2019. I'm sorry, 2018. This season, he was kind of up and down at Vanderbilt. Of course, Vanderbilt doesn't have an incredible high-flying offense, so that happens. But he's a guy that in the tight end draft that, in my opinion, is kind of top-heavy. I thought that he was going to be able to kind of separate himself from the pack, but he's another guy that might be a practice squad guy, might be a guy picked later in the draft, might be a guy that doesn't get picked at all.
I would definitely have to agree with you. He did not have an impressive combine, and I mean, I don't really think there's a great tight end this year in the draft besides Cole Kmet, and Kmet came out and he proved why he's the number one tight end in the draft, and Pinkney obviously had a chance to be considered to go number 2 as the tight end off the board, and I don't think he was very impressive whatsoever. He struggled a lot. And it was very disappointing to see because this is not a loaded tight end class. I mean, a 4.96, a 40 was awful. His on-field workout, he didn't look too great, and he's definitely a big loser.
All right, last loser for you, Sam. Do you have anybody else for us?
I think I don't want to say it, but I'm going to say it. One of the biggest losers to me was Laviska Shenault Jr. I was not impressed whatsoever, and I know that he injured and he's getting surgery, but that's not what you want to do at the combine is get injured, especially when all the scouts are watching you and you don't come in with a great, impressive 40 time. I feel like, let's think about it. A lot of the wide receivers this year at the combine were either very impressive or very disappointing. And also, too, you can credit that a lot with Jalen Reagor, the wide receiver out of TCU. He wasn't I was told he was going to run a 4.3, and he ran a 4.5. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. The boom and bust rate for some of these guys is just it's rough. And you can do this with the wide receivers, you can do this with the running back position all the time. You can say, well, they're a dime a dozen, anybody can play the position, but when you're drafting a wide receiver, and if you listen to the podcast that Sam and I have done in the past talking about some of these mock drafts that we have for certain teams and what we can expect in certain places, Sam, you're really big on the wide receivers in this year's draft, and you think a lot of them might go in the first round. But the problem with that is that if you get a guy that busts, you waste a first-round pick on a guy that's going to be around your team around 2 or 3 years,
No, and I definitely, I've been really high on them before the combine, and after the combine, I was like, what am I watching? Because you go and watch their game tape, and they're filthy, a lot of these wide receivers like Reagor and Shenault Jr., and they've done great with subpar quarterback play, so it makes you think if they get drafted by a great team that has a great quarterback that they'll be good. But now I could definitely see them going in the second round, some of these wide receivers who I thought were going to go in the first. And that's kind of a win. It's kind of a win for a team, but it's also a lose for them because they're missing out on the 5th-year option.
Before I let you go, let's do some sleepers. Who came into this combine that you weren't super high on, you didn't hate him, they come out of the combine, you say, this guy might have it?
Jeremy Chin, the safety out of Southern Illinois, great combine, and he's a sleeper pick. I thought he was going to go somewhere late in like the 5th, 6th round, but he had a very great combine, made his case to be a 2nd or a 3rd round pick at safety. The safety class this year isn't loaded with Grant Delpit and Xavier McKinney leading the way. I'm not too impressed with either of them. I don't really think that they're spectacular safeties. I think the last great safety to be drafted was Derwin James 2 years ago, and I wasn't super impressed, but he had a great combine, Jeremy Chin, and he's definitely going to be a great pickup for a team in the later rounds.
All right. Next week, we're talking about the NFC East with Sam on Wednesday, and then you can check out his podcast tomorrow breaking down the AFC West. Sam, thanks so much for coming on again. I would just want to add on here at the end of the podcast that we have AFC West content coming out tomorrow with Sam. Of course, Baseball on Mondays and Fridays. We're breaking down everything you need to know before the season gets underway. And, of course, NBA shoot-arounds sporadically throughout the week. Whenever we get a really good storyline, we get a good group of games in a row, I try to give you a good podcast. Film Friday, I'm going to have a special guest come on. I'm pretty excited about that. So you're going to want to listen and look around for that content. Thank you so much for listening. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow.